In this video, we're going to be taking a deep dive into the criminal underworld of Marvel Crisis Protocol and taking a look at the Criminal Syndicate Affiliation. Hey guys, Rich from Richmond Gaming. Hope everyone is doing fantastically well. Welcome to this, another MCP video, and continuing our series where we're going through every single affiliation in the game from A to Z. We are now on Criminal Syndicate, an affiliation that I haven't played a huge amount myself up until probably last year. I was never really interested in the play style that the old leaders brought. I did play a little bit of Shadowlands Daredevil because that was more on the attrition side, but I never really liked Kingpin's playstyle. But I really got into Criminal Syndicate when Klaw was released, of all people. Maybe one of the worst leaderships in the game. But we're going to go through each leader in turn. We're going to talk about characters that I like to bring along with them, things to look out for, things to watch out for. What crisis cards are going to work well, some favourite splash characters, and then I'll show you the roster that I have put together as well. So without further ado, let's jump over and let's start by taking a look at the original leader of Criminal Syndicate. It is, of course, Kingpin, aka Wilson Fisk. And again, we're not going to go through these cards in detail. We're just going to pick out some highlights. What does Kingpin bring even? Well, he brings the illicit network. So it's going to be a two-part leadership, once per turn at any time during an allied character's activation. It may spend 2 power to use this leadership ability. Move 1 asset or civilian token being held by the active character to another allied character within 3. A character cannot hold more tokens allowed by the crisis due to this leadership ability. Pretty standard text there. And then additionally, each healthy allied character contesting an objective token counts as 2 healthy characters when determining who is securing the objective token. So what you'll find is that this really plays into the secure side of the game. The secures for Kingpin are really, really important, as we'll go into. Now, Kingpin unto himself is I would say, an okay character. His leadership is doing a huge amount of heavy lifting there, but Kingpin's absolutely fine. The big thing that Kingpin suffers from is going to be displaced. He's on a medium base, but he does only have a short move, and he has no sort of out of action movement available to him. So a push is almost as good as a stagger. So he really, really does suffer with that. He's got some reasonable attacks. He's got some displacement of his own. Hail to the King, being able to throw size 3 or less. And dishing out the stagger special condition is quite nice. He also has a solid frame, so this character does not suffer damage from collisions with other characters. So he's a beast of a unit. He's got 7 stamina on his front. He's going to stay on that front side quite a long time. And overall, I would say Kingpin, with his entire package, with that leadership that he brings in the game, is definitely top tier. Not the best, but top tier when it comes to leaderships and characters in the game right now. He is 4 threat, so again, that's absolutely fine. It gives us lots of flexibility with who we want to take, if we want to bring splash, if we want to bring some affiliated characters as well. Okay, the next leader that we got for Criminal Syndicate was Shadowland Daredevil. He brings with him Shadow War. When an allied character attacks an enemy character holding or contesting an objective, it may reroll 1 of its attack dice. This ability can reroll failure results. Really important there. So if you look at the almost reverse side of this, which is going to be Spider-Man Miles Morales, the leadership allows you to reroll failures. Only the reroll from the leadership. Okay, so only the reroll from a leadership is going to allow you to re-roll this failure result. So basically, you're hunting down people who are contesting or holding an objective, and you're going to get some extra attrition into them. Nice one about this is it doesn't cost. The bad side is, as I say, those failures are only from this leadership. So, for example, you had access to other rerolls. If you had a failure, you would use the leadership first to reroll that failure dice. And it isn't restricted to once per turn either, but they do have to be contesting or holding an objective. Showdown Daredevil is going to be the first of our leaders, I believe, that is going to bring grunts with him. Now, grunts are an entirely optional part of the thing. So if you've got multiple characters that bring multiple grunts, you get to pick and choose which grunts you want to bring alongside you in the first instance. And the grunts do lots of different things. So the hand ninjas, they're going to be able to interact with extract objectives, but they're not going to be able to secure objectives, right? They're not going to be able to use pay to flips, and they're not going to count towards securing objectives. They do have a really, really cool action ability, which is called Ninja Vanish. Costs 0, and it's move one asset or civilian token being held by this character to another allied character within 3. The allied character is now holding that token, and then usual stuff, right? It can't hold more than they're allowed, and then this character is KO'd. Now, because grunts don't pay to interact, it does mean that you can use them turn 1 to go pick something up and then essentially KO themselves and then give that to somebody else that would have otherwise had to spend power. Now, once they've KO'd themselves, every grunt primary character, if we call them that, has a way of being able to bring those grunts back into the game. And with this one, it's his coordinated strike. So it is free to be able to bring the hand ninjas back. So you can see there, after this sack is resolved, if there is not an allied hand ninjas in play, place it within 1 with an activated token. It's now part of your squad. But if you also see Ninja Ambush, when this character is placed onto the battlefield as a result of a coordinated strike or Ancient Throwing Blade special rule, the Ancient Throwing Blades is on Electra because they share this grunt. They come back in and they immediately make an attack, which would be the ninja weapons. So they don't get to have an activation as normal. Now, grunts activate first. So if I choose I'm going to activate Shadowlands Daredevil, you always activate the grunts first. But so they wouldn't get their normal activation, but then they'll be on the board ready to go for the rest of it. And you can see there at the bottom, it does say Grunts, Electra, Shadowland, Daredevil. Okay, so let's move on then to our next leader, which is going to be the 4-threat version of Modok. This is Modok, Scientist Supreme, aka George Tarleton. A little bit different in terms of leadership and a little bit different in terms of play style. The other 2 leaders that we've gone through so far are very much what I would call frontline leaders. They're leading from the front, they're in the action, they're making attacks up close and personal. With Modok, I would say he's more of a long to mid-range. So he's sitting back from everybody, sort of calling the shots and telling people what to do. So we've got advanced idea mechanics. So that is aim. I was always disappointed when we didn't get grunts for Modok. I thought we could have got the aim grunts, but hey-ho, was not to be. But once per turn, when an allied character is attacking or defending, if it is holding or contesting an objective token and has 1 or more wild results in its roll, it may change one of its dice to a hit or a block. That is a lot there, isn't it? So there's quite a lot of there's a lot of prerequisites for this leadership. So first of all, it's limited to once per turn. Now it is both yours and your opponent's turn. You have to be holding or contesting an objective. And then if you've got a wild, which is only a 1 in 8 on every dice, you can change 1 dice to a hit or a block. Obviously, if you are, for the most part anyway, if you are going to be attacking, you want to turn that into a hit. If you're defending, you want to turn that into a block. As I say, not always the case, but that is the most cases. Yeah, Modok's an interesting one. Personally, I do think the leadership is a little bit lacking. I like Modok as a character. I think he's got some really nice stuff on there. He's got some rerolls that he can dish out. He can also force other people to take hits on his behalf, so keeping him alive for longer. He's got a size 4 terrain throw, but it is only short. Dishes out incinerate, but overall, I do find his leadership to be a little bit lacking. And, changing the result of one die once per turn just really isn't that good in my opinion. Now, if you compare this to, and again, you don't need to pay for it, but if you could turn this into a wild, that would be very, very different. If you've got either a hit or a block, you could turn the dice into a wild. That unlocks a whole bunch of other things, but just an extra result can sometimes be the difference. But I think overall, it's a little bit weak when it comes to leaderships. Now, speaking of weak leaderships, let's talk about Ulysses Klaw. The least leadery leadership in the game, Black Market Entrepreneur. This is going to be when an allied character is dazed or KO'd. After the effect is resolved, Klaw may advance short. That is it. Doesn't give anything to anybody. No trickle down into the rest of the team. So it is probably the weakest of all the leaderships for Criminal Syndicate. It's probably one of the weakest leaderships in the game, if you look in terms of what a leadership does. But boy, do I love me some Klaw. As I mentioned, Klaw really got me back into playing Criminal Syndicate after trying a couple of other things. Reconstitute form, so he gets that heal, so he keeps himself alive for much, much longer. He stacks up power so quickly. His Sonic Blast is really good, suppressive and a stun on there. And then his Sonic Shockwave can be absolutely brutal, especially with that Pierce on there. And Beam 5, Strength 7 is pretty darn good. We did speak about him a little bit under Red Skull 1. Doesn't generate the power in this version through that Sonic Shockwave, but can still be very, very good indeed. So yeah, whilst he's the weakest of the Criminal Syndicate leaders, he is definitely my favourite. Okay, so now what I want to do is something a little bit different. And let me know down in the comment section below whether you prefer what I'm doing here. But we're going to go through each leader in turn. And I'm going to talk to you about the types of characters that I think work quite well with him. Now, when I'm going through these characters, I'm not saying these are the characters you need to bring. Think of it more as some direction on the types of characters and the types of traits and the types of abilities that you want to be looking for. So let's start out then, as we did, let's start out with Wilson Fisk. So we're going to go through and pick a couple of in-affiliation characters who I think work really well with him. And then I'll talk about some splash options as well. So starting out is Ulik. I think Ulik is a great option for Wilson Fisk. Yes, he's a little bit more on the expensive side of things because he is 5 threat, meaning that you're already at 9 threat just with these two guys. But why is Ulik so good? Well, he's got a huge amount of movement. Bad Manners is, as far as I know, sorry, not Bad Manners, Crushing Leap is, as far as I know, the only charge in the game that isn't restricted to once per turn. So he gets to make a short advance, then place himself within 2, and then make a pounder's attack, all for 3 power. Put 4 up there, but all for 3 power. And it isn't limited to once per turn. Now, why else do I like him? Well, his Pounder's attack has an omnidirectional push on a wild. So the idea that I like with Ulik is you can get to a point, and if your opponent has 2 models on that point already, you attack one of them, you push them away, and then you have 1 and they have 1. But when it comes to scoring, well, guess what? Your 1 counts as 2, so you're winning the point. So what we're looking for there is movement and displacement. The other thing that he brings is something called Rock and Troll. This can be used at any point during your turn, but doesn't have to be during Ulik's activation. Spends 3. Yes, he drops all objectives he's holding, but as we know, if we've got enough power on Ulik, we can actually use that and move a token from himself to somebody else, should we wish. But he places himself within 5 of his current position. So you can have the last activation of a round, and you can have Ulik sat on 1 point with somebody else on there in your team. So you've got 2 people contesting it, and your opponent may think that their back point is safe, right? You've got nobody else who can get there. Well, Ulik can spend 3 power out of activation and get to that back point and take it. So ultra versatile, very, very mobile as a character, high stamina pool, reasonable stat line 434, so he's a little susceptible to energy, but he does reduce all damage by 1, which is nice. My other choice for inaffiliation is going to be Loki, Prince of Lies. And again, he's got a couple of things that are really, really nice. First of all, Go Forth. This is going to allow him to help Kingpin get up the board a little bit quicker, which Kingpin most definitely needs. So it's going to allow Kingpin to make a short advance. It's going to make him, it's a range 2 place. It's not a short advance, but it's a range 2 place, which is almost the same as a short advance. And because he has Guardian, he gets to do that turn 1. He's got a long move, so he can get about the board very, very nicely. He can move people around as well, so he can displace your characters, your opponent's characters. So in a similar way to how we had the push on the Pounder's attack from Ulik, we've got a displacement from Loki's builder as well. He's got that, oh my, what a pity, which is just doing damage all of the time to your opponent. And he also brings a card with him that has a similar effect to Rock and Troll. When an enemy character ends a movement within 2 of an allied Loki Laufusum, Loki may spend 2 power to play this card. He drops everything that he's holding. Enemy characters, so all enemy characters within 2 gain slow and root, and then Loki can place himself within 5 of his current position. Now, interesting to note that this card will work with the original Loki Laufusum as well. So if you did want to swap this version out for a 4-threat version and you were looking for a splash, but something that did a similar thing, OG Loki is a great option for that. And that range 4 bubble that he's got that just turns off crits and costs an extra power, or forces people to spend an extra power, is absolutely brutal, especially when you're layering in root on top of that as well. And last up is going to be Ant-Man. Now, I know you're thinking, Rich, we've spoke about Ant-Man quite a lot. He doesn't fit in a lot of places. He's not a great Avenger, but actually he's a great example of a type of character we want to be using under Wilson Fisk to snipe one of our opponent's back objectives. Let's take a quick look at his movement abilities. I did do a video a little while back. I'll put it up here somewhere. I think it's this side. That was on Gamma, but it applies to a lot of other things as well. But he's got a medium move when he's in his normal form, so he can double medium move. He's then got his change ability, so change size, which is going to cost 1, so it's going to use his power, but it does mean that he gets a range 1 place, and then for 0 cost he can hitch a ride on one of his little ants, Anthony, is that what it's called in the movies, and place himself within range 3. So if you're deploying him in the center of the board, he can get to, I think he can get to any objective on the board. So the nice thing about this is, you play him the last activation of the game, or the last activation of round 1, and whichever of your back points your opponent hasn't taken, you use Ant-Man, you snipe that back point. They've got one person on there, you've got one person on there, but because of Wilson's leadership, he's going to count as 2. I've also put Pin Particles in there as well. I think it's a reasonable card. If you are struggling for a 10th, definitely one that you can take. Really nice out of activation throw that can be, really, really brutal. Size 3 terrain feature for only 2 power, and it's somebody within 3 of Ant-Man, and then within 3 of them for the terrain that they're picking up, and then the medium throw. So it's pretty darn good. But the main thing here is Ant-Man being able to snipe one of those back points can be absolutely devastating for your opponent turn 1. Okay, that's characters for Wilson. Let's talk about crisis selection, because this is going to be so important under Wilson Fisk. So first of all, superpowered scoundrels form Sinister Syndicate. Why? It scores 5 VPs. It's the highest scoring secure that we have in the game now. So it scores up to 5 VPs per turn. And what's really interesting about this is it's also at 20 threat. So you're probably going to be able to build a team that has more characters on the board than your opponent. And with Criminal Syndicate under Kingpin, you need to take that lead, okay? The in-affiliation characters, and if you bring in 3 threats and 4 threats, the in-affiliation characters are not going to be able to sustain a barrage from some of these kaijus that are in the game. So you will probably lose out on the attrition game. So you need to win on the control and the objective game. And you want to be scoring as many of these 5 ambush tokens as quickly as possible. It also means that from your side, you're going to get some extra defense in the form of cover if your opponent is attacking you from outside of not contesting that ambush token. And as I say, you want to be trying to steal at least one of your opponent's back points during this. Definitely taking the middle objective is a absolute must, and if you can, a sneaky steal on one of your opponent's back objectives comes in really handy as well. If you can go 4-1 up on the secure going into round 2, you're going to be in a very strong position. And really any other non-pay to flip. Now, why do I say non-pay to flip? Let's take a look at Mutant Madmen. Part of Wilson Fisk's leadership has no impact on Mutant Madmen, because whilst they count for 2 when securing, they don't count for 2 when contesting. And that's the really important difference. So if I had one character on a point and my opponent walked up, they wouldn't have to roll extra successes because I've got 2 people on there, or counting as 2 people on there. So it doesn't do anything in pay to flip scenarios. You also really want to be saving your power as Criminal Syndicate as well, as we'll get onto a little bit later on in the video. But yeah, you really want to try and avoid this. It's why you'll often see Criminal Syndicate running dual leaders, either both Criminal Syndicate or a dual affiliation roster. And if they come up against a pay to flip, they probably want to avoid playing Wilson Fisk on that. Now, in terms of extracts, they don't really care too much. They've got enough tech and enough flexibility to be able to bring really to deal with any situation. But what I will say is they do quite enjoy Deadly Legacy Virus secured. Why? Well, because of that top part of Wilson Fisk's leadership, allowing you to move them around very easily. So you've got a really nice, clean game plan. If you can get all 3 within your characters, then getting your characters into a position where they can offload them to a single character. That character can run into the side of the board, stay alive until the end of the round, and then during the scoring phase, they're going to be KO'd, yes, but they will get 6, or you will get 6 VPs. So, you can get a Deadly Legacy Virus and then a favourable setup on the secures, and that's really going to help. But secures is the most important thing when you are playing with Wilson Fisk. Okay, let's take a look at Shadowlands Daredevil next. So Shadowlands Daredevil, as we discussed, very much more on the attrition side of the game. We've got a couple of shenanigans with the grunts and things like that, but very much on the attrition side. I really like Shocker for this. He's immune to stun, which is really nice. Decent stat line on his defenses, and he can up that to be essentially 653. But his big thing is if the ground is rocking, when the enemy character within 2 of this character makes an attack, it rolls 1 fewer dice on its attack roll. Shocker causes a problem for your opponents. It reduces their damage output, and if you can, maintain yours, you're going to be a really, really nice position. Other in-affiliation character is Killmonger. Single target damage on this guy is exceptional. Once you start to build up those reroll tokens that he gets, or those kill count tokens, plus the fact that he can use that leadership to then take a failure and roll out of it. And he also brings an additional way to score VPs in the form of Usurp the Throne, which is really nice. And then lastly is going to be Namor. Namor's going to do a couple of different jobs within Shadowlands Daredevil. First of all, midline extract grabber. We all know about this. He can also steal, or not steal. I hear this word steal, and maybe I've used it, but force your opponent to drop. Steal is where you take it from them, but force your opponent to drop. Lots of displacement, and he's got Prince's Protection, so if you do want to keep somebody alive, he can do so. So he's also bringing Charismatic Leader. So you're doubling down on those rerolls, which can be really, really good. All of a sudden, when you're rerolling 2 dice in your attacks, it's pretty darn good. Okay, let's talk about crisis cards. So starting out with extracts, as you probably gather, Fear Grips is going to be really nice for these guys, as is Montesi Formula, especially if you've got priority, or if you've got a character that can go and steal it from somebody. Depending on what your opponent has is really going to determine whether or not you want to go for secure or extracts. They don't mind too much what extracts they're going after. If you have to take a pay to flip, for example, something like Deadly Meteors is fine. That leans into the attrition side of things. But if your opponent's got anything on a D map, so something like Cosmic Invasion, they've got some mobility, but nowhere near as much as other affiliations. They have a lack of long movers. A lot of them are just medium movers, meaning that they're going to struggle to get from point to point unless they're in absolute perfect positioning, and even then I'm not sure if they can do. So try and avoid D maps, and what you'll see is a lot of the time Fisk doesn't mind a D map, really doesn't mind a D map, because they don't need to swamp the sides as much. For every 1 character that your opponent puts on there, you only need to bring 1, so meaning that they need to send 2 to your 1, so it becomes much easier to take over the points. And I would say a really good balance is to take both Shadowlands and Kingpin in an affiliate in your roster, and you can play pretty much any map on the board, and you're not really going to care what the setup is. Okay, let's get on to Modok. And the first character I want to talk about for Modok is going to be Abomination. I really like Abomination. I think he brings some really cool things into the game. Quite a nice amount of movement as well. But he's got a great team-up card with George Tarleton called You Will Do As I Say Monster. During George Tarleton's activation, if he is within 2 of an allied Abomination, he may spend 5 power to play this card. He just throws Abomination medium. Now, it's worth noting that Abomination suffers the collision damage for this. So it's a little bit crazy. But, a size 4, so 5 damage coming into your opponent, especially if you've already taken the brace away from them, can be absolutely brutal. I do like Abomination not just for George either, by the way. I think he's a great character with Fisk, but I wanted to put him in this part of the video just to show you that card, but could easily work with Fisk as well. Next thing I want to focus in on is another part of Modok's card, which is Genius requires sacrifice, your sacrifice, to be precise. Basically, when Modok is targeted with an attack, he can choose somebody else within 2, and they become the target of the attack. So Abomination is a great option, right? If it's a physical attack, put it into Abomination, keep your leader alive for longer. Taskmaster is also a great option. Taskmaster is able to take a hit, especially if he's within range 2. It can be really nice. He can also clap back with his photographic reflexes. Yes, it's only a, roll 4 dice on the first attack, roll 6 on the second, and then, damage for each crit and wild that you roll. But even so, it can be quite nice. Or you can lean more into it and look at somebody like Dracula, who has a full clapback, right? And a clapback that can be absolutely devastating. The problem here is playing into this side of it, you do need to keep them relatively close together because obviously you have to be within range 2. If this was slightly larger, maybe range 3, it'd have given us more flexibility. And it's just little things like that as to why I don't think Modok is the best leader for Crimson at the moment. Or you could go completely the other route and take a character like Supergiant, and every time it's a physical attack, you put it into Supergiant, knowing that she can only ever take 1 damage. That one's a little bit of a meme, but again, it's just to get you into the idea of looking at what your individual characters do, looking at what the leadership is, looking at the superpowers they've got, and then looking at how you can trigger stuff from that. OG Sabretooth would be a really good example of somebody that would work well. Maybe Venom is somebody that could work well for you as well. In terms of crisis cards, I haven't done a page on this one because I think probably of all of the 3 that we've gone through, Modok is probably the most flexible. And what you can really do is, because his leadership isn't really reliant on anything, he is reliant on a lot of things, but a particular setup or anything like that, then I don't think he cares too much about the setup. And yeah, I think he's fairly flexible, and I think you can build a roster with Modok if he was your primary leader, you can build a roster with Modok that can accommodate most situations, and kind of see the leadership as like not something that it's built around, but more like an extra bonus. So just take good, solid characters who will perform well, and that extra dice manipulation is just a bonus that they get. It's not something that you're building the entire affiliation around. Okay, on to my boy Klaw. Now, remember Klaw's leadership. It is every time a allied character is dazed or KO'd, Klaw may make a short move. It does not say non-grunt, so we're going to lean into that side of it. Starting off with Sandman. It's the only real place that I think Sandman can do work, and I've had him do work under Klaw, purely because those sand constructs are coming and going and coming and going. He can have 2 on the board. He can use them to reabsorb and heal himself, and then when he does that, hey, Klaw's going to get a movement off the backside of it as well. My favoured grunt carrier, though, is Shadowland Daredevil. I played in a TTS league once, a Klaw list, so it was a mono leadership Klaw, but I did have Shadowlands Daredevil in there. I did quite well. I won a fair few games with it. But again, using that Ninja Vanish, is it? Yeah, Ninja Vanish, there we go. We can trigger that round 1, and we're getting a short move on Klaw, meaning he's only, less than a medium move from that midpoint. So being able to get up there and get into the action. And my little secret sauce with Klaw is going to be Winter Soldier operative Bucket Barnes. He is my splash character of choice under Klaw, soldat activated, works really, really well with him, meaning that if somebody does attack Klaw, Klaw is going to get cover, no matter what range they're at. And if they don't daze or KO Klaw, Bucky is going to be able to clap them back with an attack as well. That's Spec Ops Rifle, range 5, strength 5, which is pretty darn good. And because you keep these two characters, at least in the early part of the game, quite close together, things like the kill box on Bucky, the fact that Bucky has stealth, meaning that they might be able to target Klaw, but they can't target Bucky, but they don't want to target Klaw, because if they target Klaw, then hey, Bucky's going to shoot you back. So it causes a bit of a quandary for your opponent. In terms of crisis cards, again, we want to stick to attrition focused. So Deadly Meteors, I really like. Klaw has got a big beam, and having everybody closer in can be really, really helpful. And I haven't tried this one yet, but Deadline to Destruction. We've got a lot of characters with movement. We've got a lot of characters with hit and runs. We can take charges in there as well, meaning that we can get in between these points quite easily. And if somebody's within range 3 of more than one of them, they could potentially be taking 3 damage just from Deadline to Destruction, which is pretty darn good to say the least. Fear grips, for our extract of choice, or something like Montesi formula again. Montesi I really like if we do get ourselves into a position with the grunts where they are holding an objective. All of a sudden, we've taken our grunts from a 4 dice attack up to a 6 dice beam 3 attack. This could also be the new the new Inhuman weaponry one. If anything, that might even fit in better. I personally just like Montesi because it's lower scoring, whereas Inhuman weaponry, there's 4 VPs on the board. Montesi, there's only 3. When do you pick secures? When do you pick extracts? Well, I think you want to make sure that if you have priority and you've got a midline extract play, then you want to be probably picking your extracts, right? That's probably how it goes. But yeah, again, it very much depends on what your opponent has and what they are bringing. Okay, they are some leader-specific characters. Now let's take a look at 5 characters who I think are just very, very good. And if you're playing Crimson, you should probably consider taking as part of your 10. So first up, we have got Bullseye. We don't need to go into too much detail about Bullseye. We've been through him plenty of times before. Great back point holder, but he's our in-affiliation 2 threat. Black Cat is going to work in every single affiliation. She has a steal, she has a long move, and because of the fact she turns off rerolls and she turns off crits for your opponent, she's going to be far more survivable than what you think. Next up, we've got Rhino. He brings the Rhinobbery card, lots of movement, gets around the board. Again, he's going to work really, really well under any 4 of those leaders. I also want to talk about Vulture. Vulture has some amazing displacement where he can just basically pick anybody up, any enemy character up when he starts a movement action and just place them range 2. It's like a reverse airlift from Sam, but rather than doing it on your allies, you're doing it on your opponents. But he can do this to a Hulk. He can do this to a Dormammu. Like, it's pretty crazy that this skinny little guy with wings can pick up a Dormammu and displace him, but he can do it. And then lastly is going to be Mysterio. Actually, with Vulture as well, he also brings a really nice card in the form of Rejuvenation, which is really nice. But then Mysterio, really like Mysterio. I think people look at him and don't think that he does much, but if you can get an objective on him, or if you can get an extract on him, and he can just sit there on a back point the entire game, and he's scoring you 2 points, and when anybody gets close, he can do his tricks and traps on them. It's pretty darn good. He also brings in a really nice card as well. I can't remember the name of it, but we will be taking a little look at it later on. So a spoiler alert that Mysterio is in my roster, but it basically turns off crits for your entire enemy team when they're within range 4 of him, I think it is. Okay, let's take a look at some tactics cards. Now, a lot of Criminal Syndicate tactics cards made my list of worst in the game, but they do have some amazing cards. And maybe one of the best affiliated tactics cards in the game is All According to Plan. During the power phase, any number of allied Crimson characters may spend power to play this card. If 10 power or more, I never know why it says or more, I suppose you can use it as a dump, was spent to play this card, take the priority token. Now you can choose to do this after you've got power. There is a window of opportunity after you have power or gone through the power phase to be able to play this card. This is a great way if you do manage to daze 1 or 2 or even activate a couple of your opponents during their turn, which would then give them priority. You're able to just take it straight back, and the impact that can have on the game is crazy. Do not leave home without this card. For all 4 leaders, this only not wants to be in your 10, but it almost certainly wants to be in your 5. I cannot think of a reason not to take this card. It is so good. Next up, we've got Shadow Organization. During the power phase, any number of allied Crimson characters may spend 2 power to play this card. Enemy characters must be within 2 of characters that spent power to target them with attacks this round. So it doesn't give them stealth, but it gives them, theoretically a better version of stealth. And it can be really good. It can be really good, especially if you're up against long-range characters. Guardians of the Galaxy, for example, right? All of a sudden, Yondu or Rocket sat on a back point. Well, if they want to move up and attack, then they're going to have to leave that back point, making them more susceptible. So I really like this card. I would say it probably should be in your 10, but it's not necessarily going to be something that you play every single game. But even so, really solid card. And then lastly is going to be Cruelty. Basically, if an allied character damages an enemy character with an attack during its activation, after the attack is resolved, the attacking character may spend 2 power to play this card. The attacking character immediately performs the attack listed above, targeting the damaged character. This attack can only have dice added to the attack from crit results, and this character cannot modify its attack dice during this attack. Of the 3 we're going through, I'd say Cruelty is the lesser of the 3, but most definitely if you're looking for a 10th card slot, this can be the difference of just getting that extra 1 damage out, or you've attacked somebody and they've used fallback, and they've been able to get out of range of your normal attack or whatever it may be. This can be really nice just to finish somebody off. And I do love the bullseye artwork that we get on this card. Okay, guys, and we're not going to go through any of the other tactics cards for Crimson because I don't think any of them are good enough. Okay, that is my overview of Crimson. Let me know, as I say, what you think of that setup where we go through each leader in turn. I know these videos, it means they're going to take a little bit longer. I think it might be worth it rather than the 30 minutes, which I think I only managed once or twice at the most. What we're going to do now is jump over and we're going to take a look at the roster that I've put together. Let me know in the comment section below what you think we're going to be going for, because it may not be what people expect, but as I say, it is my favourite list to play. So we are going to be taking a look at what we've got. And it is going to be a Klaw-centered list. Why have I done this? Why have I gone with a Klaw list rather than anything else? Well, you're probably going to find lots of other articles and lots of other breakdowns showing you how to play Kingpin, how to play Daredevil, potentially how to play Modok. I'll take my jacket off, it's getting very warm in my office. You're probably not going to see a guide on how to play Klaw. So I thought I would bestow it upon you. I think I've given you enough information with what we've gone through already with the 3 other leaders that you can go out there and you can make some informed decisions. But here is my Klaw list. So let's go through it one by one and take you through what we have. So obviously, leading the pack, we have got Klaw. We've brought Black Cat. We've got Bullseye. We've got Electro. Electro is a great back point holder, but can also do a huge amount of damage. And also, giving our opponent shock is just brutal. And we've got Mysterio in there as well. Sandman, the first of our grunt characters, but then the preferred Shadowland Daredevil. We've also got Shocker in there as well. We've got Spectacular Spider-Man. We'll get onto that in a moment. And then, of course, we've got Winter Soldier Operative Bucky Barnes. Now, what have we got in here? Well, this is my core. And in most instances, this is going to be my core. Having played this quite a lot, I would say you could potentially even drop Sandman and just stick with Shadowland Daredevil. But there are some things that Sandman does in terms of displacement and things that can be really, really nice. But here's my core. So in the old days, when we were playing at 15 threat, this was really nice and easy because I just used to bring Bullseye. But now that's not possible. So we need to put a 3 threat in there. So we've got a couple of options. Black Cat, obviously great for the steals. Mysterio, great as a back point holder. You may be thinking Winter Soldier is a back point holder. Not really. I kind of want him up and in the mix of things and having that kill box hit off and things like that. We'll get to a card in a moment. We'll go through Soldat Activated again. So we've got a couple of options. Now, why are some of these characters in here? Well, we do have a midline extract play, and that is going to be Black Cat with Spectacular Spider-Man, because he is Peter Parker. And if we take a look, we do have, if I can find it, the cat and the spider. So that is going to be our midline extract grab. But from here, we can flex up quite easily. Where were we there? There we go. So we can flex up quite easily. The idea behind this, by the way, as I've already mentioned, is that Shadowland Daredevil activates first. The ninjas go pick something up, hand them off to somebody else, whoever it may be. Probably not Black Cat, because she can steal, but whoever it may be, meaning that they've not had to pay. It triggers Klaw's leadership, which lets him make a short move. But you want to try and make sure that he stays within range 2 of Bucky because of that Soldat Activated, giving Bucky an extra power. Meaning that we can even potentially turn on a hit and run round 1, which can be really nice as well. What do we do at other threat levels? Well, if we need to go up to 17, we probably stay where we are. Now, we can double up on the grunts. This is a possibility. I've played it a few times. A couple of times it's worked. A couple of times it hasn't worked. But remember, you can only have one set of grunts on the board at any one time. So that is worth noting. I think I probably prefer going down the route of taking Electro at 17 threats. I think that probably works a little bit better. If we're at 18, we can very simply just go back to Bullseye, and then we can take, depending on what the setup is, if it's a B map, I might take Mysterio and Bullseye. So we've got a couple of back point holders, or, Black Cat, just to be able to get around the board a little bit easier. And then up to 18 threat. Again, we've got a couple of different options here. We can go with, up to 19 threat even. We can go with a couple of 3 threats if we need. If it's a midline extract grab, we can go with this as well, or take Spectacular Spider-Man with us. You could even potentially swap out Spectacular for normal ASM. That that would also work. But I like to have more models on the board running this list. I found it just works better being that little bit wider. Yes, you could swap out some of these characters as Sandman, for example, and take a big 6-threat hitter, but it doesn't really feed into this sort of theme and what I'm playing. Let's have a quick look then at the cards that we've taken, crisis cards. So Deadline to Destruction, no surprises there. M-Crank Crystal, this is really tight. We have got lots of... we've got beam attacks that we can do. We've got Supersonic Annihilator, which is an absolutely brutal attack. We have got things like Killbox on Bucky. Electro being able to do his thing when he gets attacked. He's also got Livewire, so when somebody ends a movement, so all of a sudden somebody ends a movement, and we've got both of these popping off, can be absolutely brutal. And then lastly, we've got Wedding Party Targeted, because I like to play with more models, but also this works quite well. It's a lower scoring. I suppose it's 2 for each, but we can have everybody lined up. So the beam attack's going to work well again. Shocker's ability is going to work well again on here. And I think Wedding Party is a fairly good attrition-focused secure. I think it can work really, really well. Notice that we didn't take any pay-to-flips. There's a lot of things I want to be spending power on, and pay-to-flips is not one of them. Fear Grips, as expected. We've also then put in Montesi, but again, you could swap that out if you wanted. And then Unexpected Guests, Crash Royal Wedding. This is really nice because turn 1, Daredevil can pick up 1, or I suppose his grunts pick up 1, hand them off to somebody. Daredevil can pick up the other, and you've got both are being secured, and you've only activated 1 character, freeing them up to then be able to go do other things, which is, can be really, really nice. You could even do a cheeky double move onto your opponent's back point and go pick up one of their objectives as well, which can be very, very effective. All according to plan, as you'd expect. Brace for Impact, Cruelty, Patch Up, Shadow Organization, Supersonic Annihilator, Soldat Activated, Cat and the Spider, Grand Illusion is the one that I couldn't remember the name of. And then this is a robbery, which means I have made a mistake. Okay, I have made a mistake. I'm going to leave that in. I'm going to leave that in because it shows to everybody the importance, okay, of making sure you check and double check your lists. So you've got an option here. You could probably get rid of Sandman for Rhino. I'd probably say that's not a bad choice. I do feel like Shadowlands Daredevil is doing a lot of work, and he is my favoured option when it comes to grunts. Or if you want to keep it as it was, you could put any other card in here that wasn't restricted. So you could go with Recall Matrix. You could go with Survival. You've got a lot of options. But yeah, I'll leave that in there. I don't often leave bloopers in, but there we go. Okay, guys, let me know what you think down in the comment section below. I don't know if you were expecting a Klaw roster, but there you go. That's the one. And do you know what? This might be what I use. I keep saying this for every video, but this might be the one that I use for the next event that we're going to be having in April, which if you want to sign up for, go and check out our Discord. It's going to be going live in the next couple of days. So go check that out. Link down in the description below. I want to give a big shout out to all of our Patreon supporters. Thank you so, so much. Really does mean the world. And all the YouTube members as well. If you do want to support us, you can do so from as little as £1 a month. And I want to give a big shout out to Matt T, the latest Patreon member that we have, part of our community. So huge thanks to Matt T and a thanks to everybody else. And if you do want to support us, you can do so from as little as £1 a month. Link down in the description below, as I says. But as always, you don't need to do any of those things. Just simply liking, commenting, subscribing goes a huge way to getting us to that 10,000 subscriber goal that we are currently aiming for before the end of the year. Hopefully you guys are appreciating all of the content that I'm putting out there. The feedback has been overwhelmingly positive. So thank you guys so much for that. It's nice to get that validation that you're enjoying what we're doing. And we're going to leave it there, guys. Shout out to Leodis Games, sponsor of the channel. Check them out below. £5 off your first order of £50 or more. And as always, it leaves me with just enough time to say stay well, keep safe, and until next time, bye for now.